Welcome to BritNewsUpdate.
Hello.
Okay, let's dive straight in. We're looking today at the pretty high-stakes world of UK government finances.
That's right. Specifically focusing on these, well, critical few days just before the big spending review.
Yeah, and our main source here is a BBC News article published June 8th, 2025. And the mission really is just to unpack the key bits from that report. Try and understand the pressure cooker environment around these last-minute budget talks.
It really is intense, isn't it? The article definitely underscores that. We're literally days away from Wednesday's review.
Which sets the budgets for years, doesn't it?
It does, for the next few years. And the BBC reporting highlights ministers locked in these, well, intense talks with the Treasury, trying to finalize their funding.
Right. And it actually names Home Secretary Yvette Cooper.
Yeah.
So she's the final minister still needing to sort of hammer out a deal.
Yes, that's what it says. Apparently, the Housing Secretary, Angela Rayner, managed to reach an agreement on Sunday evening.
Okay, so housing sorted. But the Home Office, what does the article suggest, is making that negotiation so tricky.
Well, that's a really interesting point the article digs into. It notes police budgets, they're generally expected to get a real terms increase over the next 3 years.
Okay, just quickly, real terms means?
Yes. It means the budget's set to grow faster than inflation. So genuinely more purchasing power for the police.
Got it. More cash, effectively.
Exactly. But the sticking point, according to this BBC report, seems to be the wider Home Office budget, beyond just core policing.
Okay.
And those discussions, well, they're still ongoing, involving the Treasury and number 10 Downing Street as well.
So even with the police potentially getting a boost, the Home Office still feels it's not quite enough.
That seems to be the case. The report indicates Home Office ministers are worried there isn't enough money allocated in what's being proposed.
Worried about what specifically?
About funding the recruitment of 13,000 new police and community support officers.
Which was a big manifesto promise, wasn't it?
A very significant one, yes. So it's a classic case, really a political commitment bumping up against, well, tight fiscal constraints.
You can imagine the tension. The article quotes the technology secretary, Peter Kyle. He acknowledges everyone's fighting for resources, naturally.
He does. Universal pressure, I think he called it.
But he also points out the government has already given an extra £1 billion to the police and suggested police need to do their bit, embrace reform.
Yeah, that phrase, do their bit, is interesting.
Does the article give any clues about what kind of reform they mean?
It doesn't go into huge specifics on the reforms themselves, no, but the implication is clear. Departments aren't just getting more money handed over.
They're expected to find efficiencies, too. Change how they work.
Exactly. Kyle's comment suggests it's not just about the size of the check for the police, it's also about how effectively that money gets used, value for money.
Right. And shifting slightly, the article mentions Peter Kyle also wouldn't guarantee the housing department's budget.
Oh, interesting, despite that big target.
Yeah, despite the government's huge target to build 1.5 million new homes, he did stress they remain absolutely laser-focused on delivering that.
So a commitment doesn't automatically equal budget protection across the board, then?
It seems not, based on this reporting. While some areas, like the police increase, seem prioritized, others linked to big targets might still face, well, pretty tough settlements.
And the main driver for all this tension, according to the report, is the need to meet the Chancellor's own fiscal rules.
Okay, let's just recap those fiscal rules. The article mentions them as a major constraint. What are they, essentially?
Well, the BBC report states the Chancellor is aiming to meet two specific ones. First, not borrowing for day-to-day government spending.
Okay, pay as you go for the running costs.
Sort of, yeah. And second, ensuring that the national debt is actually falling as a share of national income GDP by the target year, which is 2029-30.
And meeting those rules, it really limits how much you can spend overall.
Severely limits it, especially as the Institute for Fiscal Studies points out in the article, when the economy is only seeing relatively modest growth, there just isn't much wiggle room.
And this is where it gets, well, really interesting for other departments. Because the article suggests there will likely be extra money ring-fenced for the NHS.
Which is always a huge political priority, isn't it?
Absolutely. But if you're meeting those tight fiscal rules and giving more to the NHS, that directly squeezes budgets elsewhere, right? In those less protected areas.
Exactly that. It has a direct knock-on effect. Although we do see evidence of some money going elsewhere.
Oh, yeah?
The article mentions specific announcements, like $24 million for AI lessons in schools, part of a bigger 187 million tech skills package.
Okay, so tech skills get some focus.
And there's also mention of an 86 billion package for science and technology generally, and 15.6 billion for transport extensions in major regions. So some specific investments are happening.
Right, so you've got this struggle in departments like the Home Office, but at the same time, clear investment signals in areas like tech and transport.
All happening under the shadow of needing to fund the NHS properly and stick to those borrowing rules.
And defense, too, don't forget.
Oh, absolutely. The defense commitment is another big piece. The article references the plan to get defense spending up to 3% of GDP by 2034.
With an interim step first.
Yeah, 2.5% by 2027. And the source notes this is planned to be funded, at least in part, by cuts to overseas aid. So that's another large sort of non-negotiable claim on resources that adds pressure elsewhere.
And there was one other detail mentioned, wasn't there? About winter fuel payments.
Ah, yes, a quick mention. The government revising the decision to limit those payments only to people on means-tested benefits. More details apparently to follow on that one.
Okay, so looking at the whole picture presented in this BBC article, what really stands out is just the sheer scale of the balancing act, isn't it?
It really is. You've got political promises, manifesto commitments.
Then core priorities like the NHS and defense.
Ambitious targets like housing and police numbers.
All crashing up against these really quite binding fiscal rules and not much economic growth to ease the pain.
That IFS quote the article includes really nails it. Sharp trade-offs are unavoidable.
Yeah. They highlight that how much extra the NHS gets will basically determine how deep the cuts are in those unprotected areas.
Which is essentially anything outside the NHS, defense, and schools funding. So local councils, justice, transport beyond those specific projects, environment. The list goes on.
And this isn't just abstract numbers, is it? These are decisions being hammered out right now behind closed doors.
Exactly. Decisions that will shape the funding for the public services you interact with every single day.
So we've seen this incredibly tight spot the government finds itself in, wrestling with all these competing demands just days before the spending review is announced.
And as the article makes clear, quoting the IFS with modest growth, those sharp trade-offs are unavoidable.
So the big question really is, what do these final unavoidable trade-offs decided in these last-minute talks the BBC reported on, what do they actually mean for the services and support that impact you directly?
That's what everyone will be waiting to find out when the Chancellor stands up on Wednesday.
We'll certainly be watching closely. That's all we have time for today on BritNews Update.
Thanks for tuning in.
Goodbye. See you in the next video.